Okay, I could see that the recording has started, so I will share my screen. All right, you guys should be able to see that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We want to welcome you to this training session on creating accessible presentations with Microsoft PowerPoint. I'm Tyler Winters. I'm an accessibility specialist with MSF&W Consulting. Also here with me is accessibility specialist Melissa Romanato, and we're going to take turns leading the discussion today. In previous sessions, we learned what accessibility is and how it relates to electronic documents and what that experience is like for people with disabilities. We then learned how to make the most accessible document possible from the start using Microsoft Word and how to properly save that document as a PDF. And we've also seen how to use Adobe Acrobat Pro to test and repair those PDF documents. So hopefully you've all had a chance to join those sessions. Today we're going to learn how to properly use PowerPoint to ensure the most accessible PDF documents possible. But before we get to all that, a few housekeeping items to make you aware of. These sessions are being recorded and they will be made available for you to view at a later date. And if you haven't already, please mute your mics to avoid any unnecessary distractions during our training. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to use the chat and we will answer those as soon as we can. Okay, so let's start here. PowerPoint allows users to create fancier, more styled content with a focus on the graphics and visual presentation. There are several features available in PowerPoint that are the same or similar to what we've already learned about in our previous Microsoft Word trainings. And just like in Word, we also want to make sure we use those same built-in features and functions whenever they are available in PowerPoint as well. And those items would be the document title. You want to give your document a meaningful title. Any lists, we want to make sure we're creating lists the right way. Remember using those built-in bullets or numbering features. When it comes to links, we want to use meaningful text or descriptive text. We don't want to use click here, read more, learn more. We want the text to be descriptive. We also want to make sure to describe any meaningful images with alt text. And when it comes to data tables, again, just like in Word, we want to use the built-in tables feature. For color contrast, we want to make sure we're checking for any potential color contrast issues with some outside tools like Color Contrast Analyzer, which we've gone over in previous trainings as well. We want to do this prior to converting over to PDF. And then we also want to check for accessibility using the Accessibility Assistant, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So within PowerPoint, though, there are a few additional features and concepts we need to be aware of and use properly to ensure the most accessible PDF possible. And those additional features are what you see here: themes, layouts, slide master, slide transitions, animations, text effects, data table headers, and reading order. And to discuss and illustrate these, we're going to have to look at an example slideshow presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up another slideshow presentation here, and I'm going to be staying in here for the rest of the presentation. So feel free to follow along with your slides if you have them handy. So to start, when creating an accessible PowerPoint presentation, the first step is we want to select a theme that kind of sets the tone for not only the design, but accessibility as well. So the theme you choose, it's going to establish the visual structure of your slides, but it's important to select one with accessibility in mind. And some helpful tips to help kind of guide you in the right direction. You want to choose a theme with high contrast between text and background colors. And this is just going to ensure readability for all the audiences. And then you also want to avoid any busy or overly complex backgrounds because those can be distracting from your content and actually make it harder for some users to focus. And when it comes to adjusting or editing your theme, uh, you want to make sure to use font size of at least 18 points or larger. And this is going to make it easier to read for people who may be further away from your presentation. And then whenever possible, you want to left align your text to improve readability and accommodate different screen readers. So to select a theme, we'll want to actually navigate to the Design tab up here. And under the theme section, which is right here, this big long section, you'll find a variety of options to choose from. And you can browse and preview the themes to see how they look. So if I drop this down, we can kind of browse and preview all the themes and see how it looks with our content. Once you've selected a theme, you can also customize it further to meet your accessibility needs just by adjusting any font sizes, colors, layouts, that sort of thing. And we will talk about that more in a bit. But just starting with the right theme just ensures that your slides are visually accessible and can effectively communicate the message that you're trying to give. Okay, so after selecting a theme, the next step is to focus on your theme's slide layouts, which every theme comes with. So any theme that you pick, it's going to come with its own slide layouts. But using built-in layouts in PowerPoint just helps ensure your presentation is going to be well structured and accessible because layouts, they define the placement of elements like slide titles, any text, and placeholder areas. And this just makes your content more organized and easier to navigate right out of the gate for screen readers. So to add a new slide with a specific layout or to change the layout of an existing slide, we would go to the Home tab. So I'm going to go to slide 3 here for our example. So to change the layout of...
Sorry, Tyler, before we go too far into the layout here, there's a question in the chat about left aligning text and asking if there are issues with screen readers reading center or right aligned text. And I'll go ahead and answer that real quick here before we continue. For screen reader user, it really doesn't matter. Screen reader users, are hearing the text. Doesn't really matter where it's placed on the screen. It's just a matter of the reading order. But where you might want to consider alignment is when you're thinking about users who are using screen magnifiers. If you'll remember, a screen magnifier is a software that kind of zooms in on the screen and then allows the user to pan around. And usually, since we're talking about English, folks, start at the top on the left and move over and down. So if the content is, for some reason all weirdly right aligned, they might have trouble finding where the content starts on the screen. Again, that's not necessarily during presentation mode, but that's, if this is converted to a PDF and someone's consuming it later. So, just like with Excel, we always kind of want something in that top left cell. We want to kind of keep things in the range where people are going to see them and know that there's text and content there. Sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate that. Okay, so layouts. So let's say we want to change the layout of this slide here. So what we want to do is we want to go to the Home tab, which is right up here. And then we want to find the Slides section, which is this little section right here. And then we want to select Layout. And here you can choose from a variety of different layouts. Some might be best for like title slides, text-heavy slides, slides with images. Maybe you want to have a 2-column layout, and that's what we're going to try to do here. Let's go ahead and change this slide to a 2-column layout. And let's say I want to, instead of having everything just stacked on top of each other, let's break it up into 2 columns here, just like that. So built-in layouts, as I said before, they're especially important for accessibility because they follow PowerPoint's structured design, right? And they ensure the content is presented in a logical reading order that screen readers can interpret correctly. Because of this, and it is important, you'll want to avoid using any text boxes outside of the provided placeholders. And what that means is um, these text boxes, because this is a two-column layout, they're already here by default. They are in the placeholders already. Manually adding extra text boxes um, are not automatically part of the slide's structure or the slide's layout. And this means that assistive technologies like screen readers may just skip them entirely or read them out of order, which means that this is just going to require you to do some extra work in the PDF version when remediating for accessibility. So just sticking to placeholders will ensure your content's going to be more accessible out of the gate, and it follows best practices, and it just requires less remediation effort in the PDF version, and that's definitely the goal here too. I'm gonna go ahead and revert everything back there. Okay, so next up, let's talk about the slide master. Um, And this is a powerful tool in PowerPoint. It allows you to make universal design changes to your presentation. So using the Slide Master, you can customize elements like colors, customize fonts and backgrounds, and it just ensures consistency across all your slides. So changes made on the Slide Master are automatically applied to every slide layout in your presentation, and this just saves you time and effort later on. So you're not manually updating every single slide, the styling on every single slide. So to access the Slide Master, we want to go to the View tab. That's up here. And then we want to select Slide Master. Before I do that, though, I just want to kind of point out the text here, the Inside Iowa History, People, and Purpose. We can see that it is capital, all caps. It's got thin text. We're going to go ahead and use the Slide Master to update the text here. And yes, we can update it here in this slide as well, but it wouldn't carry over if we were to use this slide again later on. So we're going to go to the Slide Master, which is right here under Master Views. Okay, so from here we can edit the overall design of this slide or tweak individual layouts to suit our needs. This is where we're going to edit the look and feel. We could add logos or set default fonts or change the background for all our slides. So like I said before, we're going to go ahead and just update the text here. So I'm going to go ahead and right click. I've selected all the text. I'm going to right click, click on font. And let's go ahead and remove all caps. And let's go ahead and let's bold the text as well. It didn't remove all text or all caps, did it? There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to close the master view. I'm going to go back to the slide, and we can see that our text inside that placeholder has been updated. It is no longer all caps, and now it's bolded. So one important thing to keep in mind is that content added to the slide master, like any shapes or images or even page numbers, those may not convert consistently when you export your PowerPoint presentation to a PDF. And this is because some PDF conversion tools interpret slide master content as part of the background, and that results in all of those elements kind of being flattened, and they all basically become part of the background. So if your presentation is going to be shared as a PDF, you want to make sure to include any critical information like essential text or logos. You want to make sure that you're putting those directly on the individual slides themselves instead of relying solely on the slide master. And this just ensures that all the necessary content is going to be included and accessible in the final PDF. So you just want to make sure when you're adding your content that you are in the actual slide view, which we are right now, and not the slide master view, because a slide master view is mainly just for styling. Okay, revert back. Okay, so now let's talk about transitions. And transitions are they're the effects you see when moving from one slide to the next in slideshow mode. So while transitions can add visual interest, certain transitions can just be distracting, and they could negatively impact a viewer's ability to read. It can impact their ability to understand the content of your slides. So if we start this slideshow from this slide here, I'm going to go to slideshow. I'm just going to start from current slide. And in this example, you can see that the transition effects, there it goes, with a lot of the transition effects have a lot of movement, a lot of swirling around, and it looked exciting, but this transition could be overwhelming for some users and make it harder to focus on the slide's content. So when reviewing your presentation, it is important to kind of look back at all the slides in the slideshow, um, in slideshow mode, and check for transitions like this. And if you find distracting transitions, they are easily fixable. You can do so by going to the Transitions tab up here. And then you want to go to the transition to the slide section, which is right here. We can see that right now the transition is set to vortex. But if we wanted to have, make the transition a little easier on the eyes, we might want to select something from the subtle group here. So we could choose like fade. You could see that we got a little bit of a preview there. So here's fade, or we can just do none. And we're not saying you can't use transitions at all, but if you do use transitions, it is best to stick to options from the subtle group. And that subtle group, if I open this up here, there's plenty here. You just want a subtle transition because these transitions are they're smoother, they're less likely to distract the user. Also, and it should go without saying, you do want to avoid adding any sound to your transitions because sounds can be unnecessarily distracting, and they might make it harder for users to hear the presenter, especially those who are relying on any assistive listening devices. So just by keeping transitions simple and subtle, you do enhance the flow of your presentation without creating any unnecessary barriers for the people, for your audience. The next important feature to consider when we're creating an accessible PowerPoint presentation is animations. And animations are very similar to transitions, but they occur within the individual slide itself, allowing the specific elements like text or images or charts or whatever you have, uh, allow them to appear or move or change on the slide itself. So while animations can add a dynamic touch, they can also become distracting, just like transitions can. And it just makes it harder for some users to focus on your content. So, for example, let's go ahead and start this slide from its let's start this slideshow here. Now on this slide, we can see everything is kind of flying in, it might be bouncing, and while it might seem a little engaging, all this movement can be overwhelming, and it can be distracting to users, especially those with any cognitive or any visual impairments. So to fix this, we can either remove the animations altogether, or we can switch to something simpler like that fade effect we talked about for transitions. So let's click in here. So to make these changes, we want to go to the Animations tab, which is right next to Slideshow. And then we want to open the Animations pane, which is over here in the Advanced Animations section. And we could see we've got 4 animations over here. They are all selected. And with them all selected, let's just remove the animations altogether. We can see that with them all selected, there's multiple different transitions, uh, or I'm sorry, animations selected. We could choose fade, and then you get a preview of what that is. But if we go to none, they're just going to be there by default. So now if we start the slideshow, you can see they're just there when we come to the slide. Additionally, if you wanted to see what other animations are available, you can just come to the animation section, click this little drop-down arrow, and you can see all the available effects. But again, we would suggest doing something that is somewhat subtle. So again, yeah, if you feel animations are necessary, just make sure that you're using something subtle because it's not going to be as distracting as something that's more exciting or have emphasis or anything like that. Okay, so next let's go ahead and talk about text effects. I'm going to go to slide 4 for this one. Text effects are visual styles like shadow, reflection, glow, or other enhancements that can add emphasis or style to text. And while these effects may look appealing, they can introduce significant accessibility challenges. So for example, on slide 4 here, if we're looking at these heading 3s, text effects can actually reduce readability, and maybe you're noticing that by looking at this yourself, because it's lowering the contrast or making the text harder to distinguish from its background. Additionally, for users relying on screen readers, text effects often can cause redundancy, and this happens because the visual effect may layer multiple instances of the same text to achieve the desired look, which screen readers might interpret and announce as a duplicate text. So in this instance, we have text shadow here. So we have text shadow on some of the most fertile soil in the world. If it is possible that because there is a text shadow, that text is actually being duplicated and and repositioned and styled in a way to make it look like a text effect. And the screen reader could announce some of the most fertile soil in the world twice, and that can just be confusing. So because of these issues, we just recommend avoiding the use of text effects whenever possible, and instead focus on creating emphasis through accessible means like using bold text or larger font sizes. And this just helps maintain readability for everybody and avoid any potential accessibility barriers. So to remove these text effects, let's go ahead and select the text here. We want to go to the Home tab and come to the Fonts section. And here we can see that this text shadow is selected. So we're just going to take the text shadow off in this case for both. And we can see that now that text is a little bit more legible, a lot easier to read. So just by eliminating text effects, you do ensure your presentation is going to remain clear, it's going to remain readable, and it's going to be more accessible to all users. So now I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Melissa, and she's going to talk about using data tables inside of PowerPoint.
And I'm going to unmute also. Hello. Thanks, Tyler.
Yep.
So I'm going to pick up talking about data tables. So we're going to go down to slide, let's see, 7 here, where we have a data table. And just like you can do with Word, you can copy and paste a data table, you can insert it from scratch. But things to keep in mind when we're talking about tables in PowerPoint, first of all, is that your table should be relatively small. We want it to be legible. Think of the folks who might be sitting in a room or via computer watching a presentation. it's not necessarily going to be easy for them to get a bunch of data or information out of the table that way. So it needs to be small enough and simple enough and clear enough that they can understand the content of the table. We don't want to smash a whole lot of data into a slideshow. Or if we do have a lot of data, we can break it up into several smaller tables to make it more digestible. Also, we want to make sure that we use a fairly high contrast, simple table style. And I've picked one here out of the table of design options that just has a different background color for the header row. It does a little bit of alternation row to row to try to make it a little bit easier to read. But in PowerPoint, there's one additional step that we need to do with a table once we've inserted it, and that is to add row headers to our table. So by default, I've chosen a table design here that has column headers, and you can kind of see those look different. And on the table design tab, you'll see that header row is checked by default. However, first column is not checked. And so with the table selected, I need to check the first column checkbox. And that you can kind of see up here in the table styles. It added row headers to the table. And those now will convert over automatically to PDF, and I won't need to do extra work in Acrobat to make those tables accessible with row and column headers. So in Word, it kind of happens automatically. We don't have to do anything for column and row headers. They just come along for the ride. In PowerPoint, there's just one extra step, and that is to check the first column checkbox. If header row for some reason is not checked, you should check that as well, but it should be checked by default. All right. I do want to note that sometimes checking that box might change the look of the text in the cells, but you can still do whatever you want as far as, you know, the shading in the background. You can change colors, text colors, background colors, those sorts of things. So if there are some unintended side effects in the look of it when you check first column, you can just change those afterwards, make any changes you want. Okay, so very easy, but an important step to remember if you have tables in your PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so we've talked about some of the different things on different slides in this presentation. We're not going to talk about everything. Some of the things, as Tyler mentioned, are things that we learned in Word, things like adding alternate text to images, etc. But we're going to go ahead and get this slideshow checked for accessibility before we convert it to PDF. So I am going to go to my review tab. I'm going to hit check accessibility. This is the same option that we have in other Microsoft softwares like we've seen. So I'm going to take a look and I'm going to address the issues one by one. Again, remembering that your version of PowerPoint might look a little different, or you might have slightly different results in your accessibility assistant, but it should be present, and regardless of how it looks, should still flag issues. So we're going to kind of walk through these issues one by one. And we're going to start with an easy one, missing alternate text. This is something we've dealt with before in Word, for example. So I'm just going to click where it says missing alternate text, and it's going to jump me straight to the slide and have the image selected. And I can actually type right here in this box. So it shows me that alternate text box. So I'm going to go ahead and type alternate text for this image. This image is a little bit different because it's made with smart art. It's not kind of a straightforward image in the sense that it's made up of a few boxes with a background color. It's got these little arrows. It just looks a little fancier. So I am going to, one, make sure, and it did it for me, but I'm going to make sure that this outside container of the smart art is selected. So when I add alternate text, I'm adding it to the entire smart art all at once. You can select each box, for example, you can select different parts, but I want to make sure I'm writing alternate text for the whole thing as one whole because it's going to come across into PDF as a one whole figure. Okay, so for my alternate text, I'm just going to write the exact words that appear in the text. That's what we need to do. And in this case, I don't think this is necessarily an order thing. Maybe these are supposed to be done in a certain order. It's a little hard to tell. So I'm just going to write identify statewide needs, develop strategic needs. Glasses on. Unfortunately, I can't make this box any bigger. Okay, so I've got my alternate text there. Again, if it did turn out that this were decorative, in this case it's not, but you can mark images as decorative in PowerPoint, just like we can in Microsoft Word. And it does give me a little save button here, which is kind of nice because sometimes when I type in the side here, it's hard to know if it's saved. So when I click save, it takes me back to the accessibility assistant. And you can see now I've passed the alt text check there. And I've got a couple other issues. So the next one says missing slide title. So if I click, it will take me to the slide that has the issue. And in this case, it is the second slide does not have a title. So this placeholder is for the title area. And when I convert this to PDF, it's going to automatically, for anything other than the main slide, typically, it will convert the slide title into a heading level 2. It's not always exactly right, but we don't have a concept of headings in PowerPoint like we do in Word. I don't have the heading option. I can't add my heading levels 1 through 6, but I can put text into that slide title field and it will automatically come over as a heading, usually a heading level 2. So I can simply type in here. I'm going to type about us. And when I'm done, I can hit approve. So I'm going to do that, and you can see it's there. Occasionally, you might have a slide where you don't want a title, or at least you don't want a title to appear. So for example, maybe my About Us is a long slide and it carries over to the next page. So maybe I have 2 slides that would have the About Us, and it would tell me, hey, that's a duplicate slide title. I've got a couple options when I do that. I can do About Us Continued, for example, or I can hide a slide title if I choose, if I don't want it to appear visually. And I can do that on the Home tab. If I go under Drawing here and Arrange and Selection pane, you'll see that all the areas of the slide are showing in this selection pane. And if I don't want my title to show, I can just hit the eyeball and it will hide it. So that's an option that you have. If you don't want it to show in slideshow mode and you don't want it to convert to PDF, but you want to get rid of that error, you can hide a title. And you'll notice if I've hidden a title and I switch back to my accessibility checker, it's no longer giving me the missing slide. Even though I can't see it, it knows it's there behind the scenes. So I am actually going to switch back. I'm going to unhide that because I meant to put a title there and just forgot it the first time. I've got one more error here in my checker, and that has to do with the reading order on a slide. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to take me to the error message here on the right. It's taking me to the last slide, slide 9, and giving me the option here to check the reading order. And it just wants me to make sure that the reading order is logical on this slide. So it's opened this reading order pane for the slide, and it shows the order of items on the slide or objects on the slide from top to bottom. So in this case, I have a decorative image. So you can see it's decorative. It's not checked. If it's checked, then it's a real image and I can write alternate text. It's a meaningful image. In this case, it's not, so it's marked as decorative. You can see it shows that in the toolbar up there too. Then it shows kind of the main content, the title, and the picture. So these are out of order. I want the title to come before the content. I want to say thank you and then have the contact information. And then finally the Iowa logo down there in the bottom. So I can get to this reading order pane through my checker if it notices I have errors, and you can see now it shows it as resolved. I can also get to it on the accessibility tab. So once I've run the checker, if I just want to check reading order on any slide, I can hit that reading order pane, and it's got the little arrow to remind us that it reads from top to bottom, and you can look at it on other slides as well if you choose. But do remember that regardless of what you do here with the reading order in PowerPoint, it's helpful. But your final reading order is always going to be checked in Acrobat when you get to the PDF version. That's always one of our manual checks. So it's something that's always going to be double checked in the final product. So if for some reason something doesn't get resolved, gets missed, or something like that, don't worry, you have the option to check it in the PDF version as well. All right, so I've got my checker. It's clean. A couple of the other ones, it will note things like contrast, just like it does for Word, missing alt text when you forget it, table headers, merge cells. So most of these are pretty similar, other than the ones related to slide title. Are pretty similar to what you see in Word. Okay, so we're going to take our slideshow now that we've got a clean checker here, and we are going to convert it to PDF, and we're going to do that in the File menu. And we are, again, going to choose Save as Adobe PDF. So this is going to be the same option we choose for Word. And when we choose, we're going to get a message that maybe you haven't seen before. Or maybe you have, but it's unique to PowerPoint, and it's saying, oh, that's just saying I need to save. Sorry, I haven't saved it again since. Let me just rename that. Sorry, I'm going to get a different message. Maybe. No, I didn't get the message. Oh, it's because I don't have notes on this slideshow. So let me point something out. I don't have any notes on this slideshow. However, if I do, so if you have presentation notes that are, just meant for the person doing the presenting to see and use as they present, and I do save as Adobe PDF, I'm going to just replace the one I just did. Then it will ask me if I want to convert those speakers notes to text annotations in the PDF. And I'm going to say no. So those speaker notes are really most of the time intended just for the person doing the presentation. They're not meant to be read by the kind of person receiving the presentation. So I am going to say no, I do not want you to include those notes in the conversion to PDF. All right. One other note before we go any further, I do want to remind you that any transitions or animations you might have in your slideshow are not going to convert to PDF. PDF kind of makes it static so that those moving parts are no longer there. So for example, on the slide where we had the bullets kind of coming in one at a time, we don't have a slide with 1, a slide with 2, and a slide with 3, and a slide with 4 when we come to PDF. We just have them all together on the slide. So something to note is that those animations and transitions are really only for slideshow mode when you're presenting. All right, so I'm going to do my typical thing when I get a PDF. I'm going to run my accessibility check and see where we are. We've got we've got a couple issues. So one is that our title failed. We've got our regular manual checks. We're going to leave those for later, but we've got our title that failed. And I think Tyler mentioned one of the things we did do in the slideshow, just like we do with Word, is we did enter a title into the title field here on the file info section here. I do have a title, but unlike Word, that title did not automatically come over when I converted to PDF. Hopefully it will eventually. It didn't used to in Word either. And then over time that changed and it started converting automatically. Um, so hopefully it will do that down the road. But for now, we just have a simple fix, and that is to right click on that error, hit fix. You'll notice it says passed right away. And now if I save my document, you'll see that title inside Iowa History, People, and Purpose is now showing in the application title bar up here in the top left, as well as on the tab for this PDF that's open. So it actually does bring it over. It just doesn't pull it in so it shows up. And we have to do that little extra step of right-clicking and choosing fix. So still go ahead and include your title in PowerPoint because it gets you much closer, and I just have a quick fix. And then maybe down the road, it won't even, it will just come over automatically and will not show the error message at all. So go ahead and still get in the habit of adding that title into the PowerPoint before you convert. Okay, the other things that I have are my logical reading order that I always need to check manually and my color contrast. As Tyler mentioned, we paid attention to color contrast at the time of creating this document. We chose a theme that has good contrast. You know, we double checked our green here to make sure that the contrast was sufficient. We've got some white text on blue background, and we've checked all of those originally. So we're good to go in the PDF version. So I'm just going to pass that so it goes away. And I also still need to do a couple other things. One is I need to check my reading order, but two, I also want to look at the headings in this document. I don't have any heading errors, but I was not able to designate what is a heading and what level that heading should be in PowerPoint. So PowerPoint kind of does its own guessing to try to figure that out, and I need to double check that and make sure it's correct. I'm going to do that at the same time as I verify my reading order. I find it much easier to kind of go through it, you know, to look at those heading levels as I am moving down through the tags tree. So a couple notes about the tags tree. First of all, it looks different than it does for a Word document. It's got some extra layers here. So I'm on the first slide, and if I open that up, I've got a text box, and then I've got my heading inside of it. And you'll notice on each slide, it's kind of divided. Everything's just a little deeper in. You might be seeing something a little different with your version. And there is a way to change the view of this. And let me make it bigger while I'm here so that you can see it a little more easily. So if I right click, we have that highlight content option we've talked about. And right above that, we have apply role mapping to tags. And that just changes some of the tags, mostly the container tags. So it changed my slide to a section. It changed my text box to an article. My heading didn't change, my paragraph didn't change, but some of those containers especially changed. And it doesn't really matter what they show as. I think by default, apply role mapping to tags is not on, but it sounds like maybe for some of you at least it was on. So if you're confused or not seeing what you expect here, try right clicking and turning that either off or on, and it might look a little more like mine. I like this slide one just because, you know, that's how I think of this content as divided into slides. So I kind of like seeing the word slide there, but it doesn't matter, will not affect the accessibility of the document or what the end user who's using a screen reader hears, for example. Okay, so I'm going to check my reading order, and at the same time, I'm going to check those heading levels. So I'm just going to move down here, and I've got my heading 1. That looks great. If you want to, if you're the kind of person that likes to have a tags tree that is a little less deep, right? It's not so many layers. There's no reason you can't pull that heading directly into the slide and just get rid of that text box. Again, it's not going to affect how the assistive technology user hears the document. It's really just a matter of you and what you prefer, and if dealing with a larger or deeper tag tree um, is a pain for you or not. So I moved that one, so I've got it right in the slide. I don't need to do that. So on this one, I'm just going to leave them alone. It does look like everything's in the right order, and it also looks like the heading 2, the slide title, came across as the appropriate heading level. So that looks good. And I'm just going to move down here through my list items. Again, I'm just checking the reading order on each slide here. Make sure my kind of columns here, I use the right layout. So those came across as expected. But one thing I'm noticing as I check my headings here, I've got my heading level 2, but I do have some text that's kind of bold and stands out here. I want these kind of column header texts to be headings. So you can see that right now, some of the most fertile soil in the world is a paragraph. I want to make that a heading 3. So it's a heading for this subsection. So I can do that a couple different ways. I can use my reading order tool to select it and change it to a heading 3. And if I close, you'll see that changed it in the tag tree there. Since I'm already in the tag tree, I might want to just change it here so I don't have to switch over to the reading order tool. I can do that a couple ways. I can right click and go to properties and drop it down and find my heading level 3 there. Or I can either double click or hit F2 on my keyboard, and I can even type it in, which is what I'm going to do. Do make sure if you are typing that the capitalization does matter. So you'll need that H in heading to be capitalized. So the capitalization is important if you are typing it yourself. If you choose it through the reading order tool or through the properties, then it will come along for the ride automatically. All right, I'm going to continue reading down, checking those heading levels, making sure my reading order is as expected. Here's something I want to point out. So we're used to seeing figures for images, and we'll see some of those a little farther down. But you'll notice that my smart art came across as what's called a diagram. So it's a little bit different than what we're used to seeing, but that's okay. A diagram is another type of figure or image. And I can see if I right click and go to properties that the alternate text I entered in PowerPoint did carry over. It's there, and it will be read by the screen reader on a diagram tag. So I don't need to do anything special. I don't need to change that to a figure. A diagram works the same way with alt text. I'm going to keep reading down. Got my next heading. Got my table with each row. Everything looks great. And just to show you, my column headers and my row headers did come over from PowerPoint. I would get an error message in the checker if I were missing headers, but they are there. So just to show you that. And then I can keep arrowing down. This one is a figure just because it was inserted differently. So it's a figure versus a diagram, but they work the same way. And down to my last slide, I've got my reading order correct. It matches what I did on that reading order pane. And finally, I've got that last little figure at the bottom there that just says Iowa. So everything looks good. I only had to do a couple things. One was to right click and choose fix on that title message just to kind of pull it in. I did need to verify the heading levels and add any additional headings that are needed just to make sure those were all correct, since I can't control that in PowerPoint. And then, as always, I had to check the reading order of my document manually. So pretty quick. Not too many changes need to be done in PDF because I use the tools and principles that are available in PowerPoint to get it as far along as possible before the conversion. So just kind of as a reminder, when we're talking about PowerPoint presentations, we're kind of talking about two scenarios at once. Let me get my slideshow back here. So we're talking about two different scenarios at once. We're talking about the in-person presentation or webinar when the audience is simply watching and they're not interacting directly with the slides themselves. So they're just kind of passively consuming, listening, reading. And then there's the scenario where we've got the downloaded PDF, we've posted it somewhere, the user can download it, they have the document open on their machine, they can use their own assistive technology, they can apply their own settings, have a lot more control. So just kind of two scenarios, but one type of file. And as always, the documents need to be accessible. We're going to do as much as we can before we convert it to PDF. PowerPoint has some additional features from the ones we've already seen in Word, like themes, layouts, the slide master, alternate text, reading order, to make our PowerPoint as most accessible as we can before we convert it to PDF. We also want to remember to be aware of transitions, animations, text effects, anything that might be distracting in our presentations, and make sure we minimize those or make those as subtle as possible. And always don't forget, we got to add those header rows to our data tables as well. All right. Any questions for Tyler or I? We've got a few minutes left, so we'd be happy to answer any questions. As a reminder, we'll be at our weekly office hours session next Wednesday. Those are always on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. And we're always available to take a look at documents you've been working on. Feel free to send them to the accessibility@msfw.com email address. If you run into them, during the week, or you want to just send it and say, hey, let's talk about this on Wednesday, we're happy to do that as well. Any questions? Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, this is kind of a tangent question, and it's okay if the answer is I don't know or I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
So, in the past, sometimes when we were posting PDFs of long presentations, we might put, two slides on a page or print them as like notes handouts to the PDF. And I've been fiddling with that and I'm struggling. It's not coming across well with the tags. I'm just wondering if you have any advice on, is that something to avoid or is there a way to do that properly?
Yeah, I would generally avoid it. Usually when you have, and this sounds like what you've run into, usually when you have multiple slides on one page, it gets really, really difficult to read. And it also makes it extra hard for you to do the remediation that you may need to do in PDF. You're doing this thing where you're constantly zooming in and out and trying to maybe use the reading order tool to draw a box around something, and it's hard to get and everything's tiny. And it also causes the end user to, same thing when they're reading it. Okay, I got to zoom in, then I got to move over, then I got to zoom in again. So it can get really different. Notes slides are different. They're easier because it's still just like one slide. It depends how many notes you have, but the size is not so shrunken usually. Because usually we see like 4 slides on a page if you're doing multiples. So I would avoid that. There's no real space saving when you're on the screen, right? If it's printing, I understand that, maybe you're trying to save paper or something like that and ink, but on the screen, it doesn't matter, if it's 25 slides or 100 slides, it really doesn't matter. It's like this infinite space, right? And so I would definitely recommend just doing one slide per page so that it's easier for the end user and they don't have to zoom in and out or for you when you're remediating.
Yeah, usually when we've done that, it's for printing purposes, just to keep it more manageable page limit
Yeah,
wise.
page count. Yeah. And, a lot of times, depending on kind of the presentation, um, during the presentation itself, if you're in a room and it's kind of more workshoppy and people are taking notes and things like that, and, providing the slides with the note spaces next to them is nice. Certainly something that you could do optionally or post them, and people know how to print them. If you're posting them out as PowerPoint, they can choose to print them that way. Or not, I shouldn't say posting them, I should say sharing them with your audience in a presentation type scenario. Later when you're posting them, they should always be PDFs. But yeah, it's handy, but people can generally kind of take that on themselves if they choose, if you make it available, or even if they sign up for this or something like this, you could have them request if they want that, and that would cut down on the printing as well.
Sure. All right. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, good questions as always. Anyone else? We started a couple minutes late, so we're just a minute over now, but we could take a couple more minutes if we need to.
I'm so sorry about that. That's totally my fault.
Oh yeah, no problem. We're not pressed for time. It worked out just fine. So
Yay. Okay.
no problem. Thanks for recording and taking care of that for us. We appreciate it.
Of course. I'll go ahead and stop the recording so that if anyone else needs questions,
Okay, great. And we want to thank you guys